In Lesson 1-4, Day 1, you are going to be learning about the distributive property. Let's first look at this problem right here using order of operations. Using order of operations, we would do 10 plus 1, which is 11, and then 11 times 7, which is 77. Now, the distributive property says that you need to take this 7 and multiply it by everything inside of the parentheses. 7 times 10 is 70, and this 7 times this positive 1 is going to be 7, and since it's positive 7, I'm going to write plus 7. 70 plus 7 is 77. Notice how we got the same answer doing this problem the two different ways. In this particular problem, it might seem silly to go through this process. However, sometimes it allows you to do mental math that's easier to do in your head by breaking it apart like that. Also, when we start throwing in some variables where we can't just add what's inside of here because they're not like terms, which we'll learn about in our next video, using the distributive property allows you to simplify it. Our first example, a group of 7 adults and 6 children are going to the University of South Florida Bulls baseball game. Use the distributive property to write and evaluate an expression for the total ticket cost. Since we have 7 adults and 6 children attending, that's 13 total tickets, which means we're going to be able to get the price for groups of 10 or more, which are $2 each. So the expression I'm going to write is $2 times the quantity of 7 adults plus 6 children. Now, using the distributive property, 2 times 7 is 14, and 2 times positive 6 is 12, so it's going to be plus 12. 14 plus 12 is 26. $26. Example 2 shows how this comes in handy for mental math. If you were wanting to multiply 7 times 49 and you didn't have pencil and paper handy and you don't have a calculator handy, one way you could think about this problem instead would be 70 times the quantity 50 minus 1, because 50 minus 1 is the same thing as 49. But when we break it apart this way, it becomes easier to do in your head. 7 times 50 is 350. And 7 times this minus 1, I'd like to think of it as a negative 1. 7 times a negative 1 is negative 7, so it's going to be minus 7 or plus a negative 7. 350 take away 7 is 343. Now, while I did write that out, I could have also done that in my head. 7 times 50 I can do in my head, and then the 7 times the negative 1 I can also do in my head. You might want to pause the video and see if you can try the next two on your own. For 304 times 15, I would probably think of the 304 as 300 plus 4. And that all multiplied by 15. Believe it or not, that's actually pretty easy to do in your head. 300 times 15, or 300 times 15 is 4,500, because 3 times 15 is 45. Therefore, 300 times 15 is 4,500. And 4 times 15, 4 times 15 is 60. 4,500 plus 60 is 4,560. In the next example, I would probably think of this one as 44 times the quantity 2 plus 1/2, because 2.5 can be broken up into 2 plus 1/2. Now using distributive property, 44 times 2 is 88, and 44 times 1/2, or 1/2 of 44, is 22. And since it's plus, or a positive, it's going to be plus 22. 88 plus 22 is 110. In the third example is where we throw some variables into the mix, and this is where the distributive property really comes in handy for simplifying. Because we can't really do anything with 3w minus 5 because they're not the same thing. They're not what we call like terms, which we'll learn more about in the next video. So let's go ahead and use the distributive property, and we're going to give this 7 to everything inside of the parentheses. 7 times 3w is 21w. And then 7 times negative 5. Since it says minus 5, we're going to think about that as a negative 5. 7 times negative 5 is negative 35. And since it's negative, we're going to write minus 35. So 21w minus 35. Next up, this time they have the number on the outside to the right instead of to the left, but we're still going to multiply everything in the parentheses by that 4. 4 times 6v squared. 4 times 6 is 24, so it's going to be 24v squared. And then 4 times v, that's a 1v. 4 times 1v is 4v. And since it's positive or plus, we're going to write plus 4v. And then 4 times, this is like a negative 3, because minus 3 is the same thing as adding a negative. So 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. Since it's negative, I'm going to write minus 12. And that's it. That's your final answer. That's simplifying it. Sometimes kids are a little thrown off because usually they think they need to get it down to a single number or something, but really this is as far as we can go. If you want, you could pause the video right now and try these on your own. 2 times 8 is 16. And 2 times a positive 4n is a positive 8n, so plus 8n. Negative 6 times r is negative 6r. Negative 6 times a positive 3g, that's going to be a negative 18g, so minus 18g, since it was negative. And then a negative 6 times a negative 1t. Negative times a negative is a positive, so this is going to be plus 6t. With t's, I like to make it cursive t with a little hook on the end so it doesn't get confused with the plus sign. All right, now the last two examples. Everything inside of here is going to be multiplied by a negative 3. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. And then a negative 3 times a negative 5q. Negative times a negative is positive, so 15q, a positive 15q. And the last example, negative 4 times everything in parentheses. Negative 4 times negative 8 is positive 32. And negative 4 times a negative 3m, negative times a negative is positive, so it's going to be plus 12m.